Hello, and welcome to another Blogcast. I'm Laura Pimentel, Senior Director of Development at ProLiteracy, and today I have the pleasure of speaking with Sarah Kith, a Diversity and Inclusion Advisor at the Library of Congress. Sarah Kith was appointed Diversity and Inclusion Advisor in November of 2019. Since the 90s, she's worked for small business, nonprofit organizations, U.S. federal agencies, state and county government. Her extensive work experiences include roles such as ombudsman, convener, ADR advisor and instructor, and educator and consultant for cultural competence. Sarah Kith was a child refugee from Cambodia and grew up in the Washington, D.C. metro area, where she earned her undergraduate degree at the American University. She earned her Master of Science degree in Conflict Analysis and Resolution from George Mason University, and later returned to American University to complete her second Master of Science degree in Organization Development. She's also a certified narrative coach practitioner, holds an executive certificate in facilitation from the Georgetown University, and is a certified organizational ombudsman practitioner with the International Ombudsman Association. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Laura. That was quite extensive having me today.
Well, thank you, and that's all you, so you've earned it. I would just like to say we're very grateful also to the Library of Congress for connecting ProLiteracy to you, Sarah. In 2019, ProLiteracy was awarded the David M. Rubenstein Prize of the Library of Congress Literacy Awards. So today's topic of conversation is really going to revolve around Sarah's work with diversity and inclusion at the Library of Congress, which really has been a model that a lot of us can look to as we dive deeper into this work or continue along our continuum of our diversity and inclusion work as organizations. So Sarah, how about we start with just a little bit of an intro about the Library of Congress and tell us a bit about your role as diversity and inclusion advisor.
Sure, I'm thrilled to be working at the Library of Congress. It's the world's largest library in the world. And as you know, we have access to creative records of the United States and extensive materials from around the world, both on site and online. It is the main research arm of the U.S. Congress and home of the U.S. Copyright Office. In fact, this year celebrating 150 years for the Copyright Office. So we are very proud. The work of library in service of Congress and the American people of all ages and background. Our mission is very much to provide access to the records, to the material, to engage, to inform and inspire people of all background to in their, in yours, intellectual and creative endeavors. So thank you for asking that question. My role as the Diversity and Inclusion Advisor is one to support the workforce. So it is very much an internal focus. We believe that the staff are the assets of the library in terms of workforce being able to create and invent and serve Congress and the American people, and that we reflect the diversity that we serve, the communities, the diverse communities across the United States. So we cultivate engagement and inclusion, a sense of belonging where all staff at the Library of Congress feel supported to be their full potentials, to do their best work, to collaborate and work with each other to advance the mission of the library, which is very much to make sure that people of all backgrounds have access to the informations, to the primary sources that we have to bring history alive for all people to enjoy and learn and grow.
Yes. It's really, I'm really realizing, I think, as I'm hearing you say that, how high stakes almost this work really is, especially being the research arm for Congress. I wonder, so we're at ProLiteracy, where we serve adult literacy organizations. We have about 1,000 members across the country. When you think about all that is at stake here. You know, when you think about literacy and you think about diversity and inclusion, can you give us a little bit of your perspective about what do those intersections look like, you know, and just how does that relate back to the work that the library really does?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. In today's times, and we, with teleworking and remote learning across America during COVID-19 and this public health crisis and social distancing, how important it is to stay engaged, and that libraries are a source of information for learning, for community engagement. So the literacy is very much at the very core of our, what we feel that's very important in our life, in our civic engagement and our interaction with one another, to stay connected, to feel that we can inquire, continue to learn and adapt. So very much, I think about, goes back to as a child, not having access to learn how to read and write, and to be able to know that read.gov is part of the library literacy program, to be able to spread the joy of reading. That is very important in our time today, that it's continue to, that we are relevant, that we continue to exist to serve and support communities thriving.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let's dig in a little bit more to the diversity and inclusion, you know, your role really. So
Mhm.
when we think about just what does that even mean? Let's just level set the stage for everybody who might be listening to this.
Mhm.
What does that mean? How would you define diversity and inclusion? Sometimes we hear diversity, equity, and inclusion. So could you also talk about the equity piece?
Sure. So, I mean, I want to keep this simple and so that we can really dive deep too, which is that when we think about diversity, we're thinking about representation. We're thinking about, people reflecting diverse backgrounds, people, of all spectrums of diversity. So whether that's national origins to race to language to religious belief, of all creeds, and backgrounds, ages, and ability, that we are, that we welcome everyone to the library space to be able to work and thrive. And that, inclusion, I think about the analogy often we hear in the diversity and inclusion space is that diversity is being at the table. Inclusion is about being heard and being seen. And so the space of, feeling like you belong, that you are worthy, that you make a difference. And so, and then when we talk about equity, it really is being intentional and making sure that we create opportunities that that everyone has access to the same informations and opportunities to be their best self, to work hard, to learn, to develop, and to advance in the workplace. And we think about sort of um, the digital divide that has been unveiled by COVID-19, and how it is very important to ensure that people have access to Wi-Fi and the internet, to be able to access digital books, and to be able to have access to informations that are available online. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's really helpful, and I love the analogy of how you put that. You know, sitting at the table, or even being invited to the table, and then being heard and feeling like you can be at that table, because I think a lot of times we might be really good at getting people to the table, but making it a
Mhm.
space where everybody can really, you know, throw out an idea or have a comment or you know, whatever it is, participate in some way. I think that's a really good way to describe that. So thank you for giving that definition. Can you tell us a little bit, just what is your experience about what the library has done around diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Mhm.
You know, right now, a lot of organizations are trying to do better around this topic, given recent events in particular, but can you tell us anything about what recent events may have, how they may have even influenced the library's work in this area? You guys have been doing this for such a long time. As I mentioned earlier, you're really a model, but everybody evolves and changes, right? So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do. What does this look like in practice?
Yeah, so in practice, I mean, even with the working remotely, that we have been really resilient in being able to continue to come together as a community. And so what I mean by that specifically is our Office of Equal Employment Opportunity and Diversity Programs support the Diversity and Inclusion Working Group that has representations and members, from across the library, whether it's the law library or the congressional research staff. That we have, representative from all parts of the organizations at different levels of the organization coming together and really working together to continue to engage, to find ways to engage workforce across the organization. And, areas that we deliberate and research and talk about include recruitment and retentions, training and development, and now we're actually looking at planning for a staff forum to be able to listen and share our perspectives about, what is it like going forward? How do we co-create? How can we be, the diversity and inclusion working group at the Library of Congress? How do we work with others and across the library in terms of co-creating and cultivating space for inclusion? And so I'm excited about that. We're also looking through the lens of adaptive complexity, adaptive work, that there is no easy answer, and to be able to come together, participate and engage in conversations, in dialogue, to be able to bring ideas together and say, hey, this could work. And so it's, the point is that it is very much an experimental kind of incremental experiments of trying out, to see what works. And so, and I think that is part of best practices, is the willingness to try and be in the difficult conversations, to stay engaged and find innovative ways to push past, what we are afraid of, whether that might be around, differences or just around challenges right now. How do we deal with feeling isolated, and how can we overcome, our lack of interactions across differences, to be willing to go beyond sort of our initial bias and engage in deep conversations about what matters to you. And that our quest, our common quest, is for a search for belonging. How can I make you feel connected and connected to the purpose of what we do at the library? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I really applaud those efforts, because like you're saying, it's very difficult right now, a lot of people are still working from home. So that inclusiveness is something you probably really, in your position, really have to strive for, and really have to make some adaptations, some changes. I'm curious, when you are in a room and there's these difficult conversations that might be had. I know you're very well trained. We just went through your bio on all these different facilitation techniques and all sorts of coaching techniques. But I would just love to hear, do you have an example or anything that you can say that when it gets really sticky, here's a go-to tool that you try to pull out first. Is there, can you give us some advice in that sense of, we all probably are trying to have more and more difficult conversations these days, but they're difficult conversations, and we're not all trained the way that you are, to facilitate these in our organizations or in our homes even. So can you give us an example of a few techniques or ideas that you always kind of your first go-tos?
Yes, so absolutely. I'm happy to share that, it is in the listening, deep, active, deep listening for others, as they're sharing and willingness to also be vulnerable. So a recent example I can share with you, I recently held a facilitated follow-up sessions to an online learning on unconscious bias. And it was, very much in a deeper space around overcoming your own unconscious bias. And so what that speaks to is really that we're all, that we are all biased, and that there's a function for why bias exists, where we are hardwired to be intuitive and instinctive. The idea of there's a part of us that can make quick decisions, and that there's a function for survival, for making a quick decision in the presence of, say, detecting danger or threats. And so we know that we are hardwired for looking for that, and that also our perception is inaccurate. And so we want to slow down. And so the technique of really taking a pause, literally like pausing and slowing down. Mm-hmm. And, being aware of what's happening for you in the moment, what's happening for me in the moment, and a willingness to be curious, to suspend judgment is what I was about to say. Mm-hmm. And to listen deeply from a place of where is this person coming from? What are they trying to communicate? What are they trying to share? So there is the empathy, the practice of empathy, which are skills, where we cultivate a sense of curiosity and a growth mindset of wanting to learn and wanting to understand where this person is coming from, and hearing their perspectives, and learning about what it is that they're communicating, so to be kind, to have compassion, mm-hmm. That we all worry about messing up and not looking good, and so there is a vulnerability of willingness to share ourselves, and being okay to say, this might be difficult. I don't know where this is going to go, but that in the process of having a conversation with you, I hope that it shines dark corners, and that we'll be in a better place at the end of this conversation. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's deep listening, empathy, and a willingness to learn what we don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And to get feedback. I mean, that's part of reducing the blind spots, is to be willing to ask for feedback.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think about the leadership required of, right now, Dr. Carla Hayden is our mm-hmm. Librarian of Congress. I'm just curious if you can tell us a little bit about, are there any attributes or qualities of Dr. Hayden, that make this work easier for you, or that she might continue on with the values of the library? I would love to hear more about the leadership aspect of it.
Yeah, she is, very down to earth, very accessible by her staff, by everyone. She is just a very inspiring leader. And, in particular, I know that her current, she's super busy. She's she's recently has done so much work around, her conversations that she's facilitated on Race in America series, for example. Her conversations with poet laureates, Joy Harjo, first Native American poet, Tracy K. Smith. I mean, those conversations with Colson Whitehead, various, so many different conversations that she's facilitated that's been inspiring and enduring, that really is very heartwarming and modeled, the need for conversations, the need for leaning into challenges in our history, challenges in our time around race and democracy.
Yeah. So it sounds like, one of the key takeaways for leaders is we're all in this together, right? I mean, we all have the same work to do. Nobody is born knowing exactly how to do this. Like you said before, everybody's born kind of with our own bias, or we form our own biases throughout our lives. So just because, people might be in a certain position, it doesn't mean they're exempted, right? From doing this work, from modeling this work, from engaging, and constantly evolving throughout that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what motivates you, what inspires you to keep going, because this has been a tough year. This has been, I mean, one thing after the other this year. So, when times do get hard, or when there's an especially, tough conversation or situation, that you're thrown into, what do you do to kind of keep yourself motivated and inspired?
Lots of different things that's coming to my mind, but one in particular, is really self-care. Self-care is really important right now, and recognizing that it may be difficult. Some days you wake up and you're just like, wow, I don't know, how to stay engaged here. And so a willingness to recognize where you are in the moment. And that also speaks to colleagues who might be in a space similar, and to be willing to hold space for yourself, to have a walk, go for a walk, or to read some inspiring poems, to go to, to reading a particular book that is inspiring, that can sustain you during these difficult moments. But yeah, I love learning, and so cultivating that love of learning, whether it's writing, gratitude journal, going to the gratitude journal to write what are you grateful for right now, and to remind yourself of every breath that you're taking, that you are grateful to be alive and to be able to continue to learn and work and play and feel, to feel what you are feeling in the moment, and just remembering that that is part of being human and being alive today. And so that that really is very helpful in terms of a process of just acknowledging where you are and giving yourself time and space to move through that, and then to come back and bring focus to what's in front of you and what's in the moment of what you need to do to get things done. So
I think that's great advice. Thank you. Just looking here. Let's see. Well, I mean, I would just say, I think the last question really is any advice that you might give to organizations, and individuals as well, who are really trying to improve their diversity and inclusion practices for their, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a library, another education organization, organizations that are really kind of agents for change. So we're all probably in a different place along the journey. And so what would you say to an organization that just wants to do better? You know, where do you start?
Yeah, no, that's perfect what you just said, which is the journey, recognizing that it's very much is a journey, which means that we have to start somewhere, and starting somewhere means where you are. Start with where you are, and really begin to look at visioning out, where do you see yourself, and how do you cultivate where you are and where you'd like to be, and begin with yourself. And so the questions of what can you do in terms of growing and being change agent around diversity and inclusion work, that it is very much core to literacy. I think about literacy as being the core foundations of human development. And so, being able to recognize and see the person and acknowledge where they are at, and to help them, and to be seen, to be heard, listening, and cultivating space for them, for that person, for the organizations, for all of the diverse individuals, and at the collective, what kind of work environment, what kind of conditions that would help all to thrive.
Mhm.
It is a journey in the making, engaging oneself and engaging others, and together, cultivating a sense of belonging, and a sense of the person being supported to learn, to express, to have voice, and to share in many different ways of gaining and increasing literacy.
Yeah, that's so well put. Thank you that for putting that out there. I think that's um, it's just, you said that very beautifully, very very, and I think that really resonated with me. So I hope that that resonates with others who might listen to this. Um, I'm putting you on the spot here, Sarah, but I promise, last question. Any like resources, books, websites, anything that you think are just good things to check out?
Mm. Um, I think about the library website. There are, I think about just a history of our country that is very much, the Library of Congress being the world's largest library, that really have all these amazing resource, primary resource that you can, um, learn and inquired into about our history, whether it's civil rights and or exhibitions with the Rosa Parks exhibition, online access to her writings in her own words, and what she experienced, and what she felt, and or Clara Barton's diary, and just so many resources online right now that certainly can begin to, for each of us to self-educate. I'm continue to learn every day, and to continue deepening learning, self-learning, learning about myself, and learning about how history is still very relevant and very important in our conversations today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. We really appreciate your time today. Thank you again for spending this time with us, for sharing your insights with us and your knowledge and expertise. It was a real pleasure having you.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Laura, for having me and for having this conversation. So I wish your organizations, amazing journey as you move forward, and other organizations that you are supporting to help them, cultivate and inspire one another around diversity and inclusion work. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if there's any other thoughts or comments, please leave them in the comments section of this interview. We'd love to address any additional topics around DEI or any other questions that our viewers might have. Thanks again, Sarah. Thank you to the Library of Congress, and thank you to our viewers. We really appreciate your time today, and I wish everybody to be well. I hope everyone stays well and take care of ourselves, take care of each other.
Yes, and be well. Thank you so much.